Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Before I get started, I want to address the troubling news coming out of Hong Kong. Canada joins the international community in expressing its grave concern with the passage of national security legislation for Hong Kong by mainland China. After studying the legislation and its impact, Canada will treat exports of sensitive goods to Hong Kong in the same way as those destined for mainland China. Effective immediately, Canada will not permit the export of sensitive military items to Hong Kong. We are also suspending the Canada-Hong Kong extradition treaty and updating our travel advisory for Hong Kong. Canada is a firm believer in the one country, two system framework. We will continue to support the many connections between Canada and Hong Kong while also standing up for its people. In the days and weeks to come, we're also looking at additional measures, including around immigration. Aujourd'hui, je suis très heureux.
Today, I'm very happy to be here in Moisson and Gatineau with Steve McKinnon at the food bank. I just met some remarkable volunteers that work at this food bank, and I want to thank them for their work. I also had talks with Diane and Armand, the president and CEO of Moisson Outaouais, and they've talked to me about the difficulties that they've experienced during the crisis. Because of the pandemic, more people need the help of the food bank. And as many organizations throughout the country, Moisson Outaouais needed a helping hand to be able to adapt to this new reality. Our government, therefore, invested $100 million to sustain or support food banks like this one to allow them to continue to do their essential work. For Moisson Outaouais, these funds have allowed them to hire more drivers to deliver food and buy more food.
Canadians have come together to help each other and keep each other safe. It's taken a lot of hard work and many sacrifices, but it's starting to pay off. We are controlling the spread of the virus. And because the situation continues to improve, we can now pick up where we left off on many of the things we had to put on hold over the spring. As a first step, we're moving forward on 92 infrastructure projects in British Columbia under the Investing in Canada plan. All told, these investments amount to $150 million and will create good, well-paying jobs right across BC. I'd like to thank Premier Horgan for his support and partnership throughout this process. It just goes to show that by working together, we can continue to create jobs and build stronger, healthier communities. As
we pursue the relaunch of our economy, the priority of our government is to help build resilient economies, more prosperous communities. And part of this work is to help people return to work. Throughout the country, there are many businesses that are availing themselves of the income subsidy to rehire their employees. We're talking about 2.8 million employees who are now back on the job thanks to the program and thanks to other initiatives such as the Canadian Emergency Benefit, the commercial rent subsidy, and the business account. We are sustaining businesses that are at the heart of our economy. But of course, there is still a lot of work to do.
Our government is taking yet another step to help Canadians get the training and support they need to find good, well-paying jobs. As part of our annual funding, we're investing $40 million over 3 years in the Union Training and Innovation Program. Skilled tradespeople are a vital part of our workforce. They build our towns, our cities, our communities, and they will play an important role as we restart the economy. This pandemic has been an unprecedented challenge for our country. And as I've said right from the start, our response to COVID-19 will evolve as the situation changes. Next week, I'll be hosting a 2-day virtual cabinet retreat. This will be an opportunity to map out our approach going forward to keep Canadians healthy and safe and keep our economy strong. We will also discuss how we can make our country more resilient to potential future waves of the virus. Of course, COVID-19 is not the only challenge that Canada faces, so this retreat will be a chance to move forward on addressing systemic discrimination and systemic racism. Next week, our government will also be releasing an economic and fiscal snapshot. This report, which Minister Morneau will present to Parliament on Wednesday, will give Canadians a picture of where the economy is right now, how our response compares to that of other countries, and what we can expect in the months to come. Speaking of next week, let me also remind people who receive old age security benefits and the guaranteed income supplement that you will see an increase in your benefits this coming week. In May, we announced this one-time boost of $300 for OAS and $200 to the GIS. Together, this means if you get both benefits, you'll receive an additional $500.
I also want to remind all of those who are receiving the income security and old age security that their benefits are going to increase next week. In May, we had announced that people will receive $300 more through old age security and $200 more through the guaranteed income supplement. This is just an example of the way that we support our seniors when they need it most. Before I end, I would like to take a moment to underscore the fact that Monday will mark the 7th anniversary of the Lake Megantic catastrophe. It's going to be a difficult day for those in that community. Over the years, the community has proven to be resilient, incredibly resilient. So we will commemorate those that we have lost, and we will continue to support the families that have been impacted by this tragedy.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll go to the phones first for questions. One question, one follow-up. Operator.
Thank you, merci. Première question, Marie-Vastel Le Devoir, à vous.
Marie-Vastel Le Devoir. Yes, good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I would like to come back on the Air Canada issue because we've been talking about it since the beginning of the week. This spring, other countries in the world, like Air France, have received billions in help. But Air Canada, of course, supplies essential regional routes, and this is going to impact directly your MPs. So are you looking at a package for the airline industry? And are you going to mandate that Air Canada maintain regional service? Since the beginning, we've understood, of course, that certain industries, certain sectors of the economy were going to be more severely impacted by the pandemic and the ensuing economic crisis. And that's why we worked from the beginning to help workers throughout the economy, but we also adopted measures or looked at the possibility of adopting measures that would be helpful to certain sectors. We continue to work with the air passenger industry that are important for the growth of our economy, and we will do what's needed. But we are disappointed with Air Canada's decision to interrupt service to certain regions. We know that Air Canada benefits from the more lucrative routes in the country, but we also expect them to provide service in regions that are less lucrative, but where people nevertheless rely on those links for transportation. So we hope that they will review their decision as the economy improves.
Merci. Comment est-ce que vous avez l'intention alors de vous assurer qu'Air Canada continue à desservir les régions? Je comprends que
So how are you going to go about this, ensuring that they do provide regional service? We haven't heard anything from your government in the last 3 days. People are impatient. And so are you going to propose the creation of regional companies or a Quebec company? And are you open to are you looking for a Canadian or federal solution or a Quebec-based solution? Well, Marie, this pandemic really hit certain sectors hard, and many companies have suffered. We all have to make adjustment, but it's important that the Canadians that live in all different regions of Canada be entitled to some regional air service. And I think that what is impacting Quebec also impacts the Maritimes and other regions in the country. So it's something that we're looking at with Air Canada and others. We are hoping that they will resume service soon.
Thank Thank you, merci. Prochaine question, Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. À vous.
Catherine Lévesque, Canadian Press. Yes, Mr. Trudeau. I want to continue on that same issue because you haven't really answered the question. The government of Quebec did float the idea of creating its own air passenger service. So I was just wondering if this is something Ottawa would be ready to contribute to. I believe that during the pandemic and during the relaunch of our economy, we will, in effect, have to adjust our way of doing things. And because of the existing crisis and in the future, things are going to change. We are going to work with other government levels and with the industry, including the air travel industry, so that we can look at how we can fill immediate needs and how we can emerge more resilient and stronger in the coming years.
Et puis, oui, tout à fait, sur un autre
follow-up. Yes, on another topic. Your government announced this morning that you were going to drop the WE charity as a manager of the student volunteer program. Why did you make this decision, and do you believe there was a conflict of interest between you and your spouse? Yes, we decided to withdraw from the mandate that we've given them, and we support their decision. As to the way this decision was, we are in fact disappointed with the way this panned out. We encourage people to continue to get involved. We have tens of thousands of young people who have come forth and are ready to volunteer in various organizations and communities throughout the country, and we will continue to work with them. But it will not be with the WE charity.
This situation has unfolded has been unfortunate. We will continue to work hard to make sure that young people get the opportunities to serve their country, but it will no longer be with the organization WE.
Thank you. Next question, Operator.
Thank you, merci. Next question, John Paul Tasker, CBC News. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Yes, a number of people in the charitable sector have questioned your assertion that WE was the only group with the nationwide reach to distribute these grants to students, and some have said that's just simply not true. Do you stand by that statement, or do you think now that other options should have been considered for this program?
Well, we are going to be moving forward with government itself delivering directly these grants. Certainly there are certain things that we will not be able to do as government delivers this program directly. Reaching out to actively search and pull in volunteers was something that the WE organization could do because of its extensive network and practice, as well as support in training and onboarding volunteers so that smaller organizations, for example, could ensure that we're giving the best possible experience to Canadians. That was something that WE was ready to do that government isn't necessarily best positioned to do. But we're going to continue to work with partners across the country and within government to make sure that these young people who've been stepping up right across the country at a time of COVID, but year in, year out, to try and contribute to the well-being of their community and their country, continue to get those opportunities to make a difference in their communities.
We are, of course, going to continue to ensure that young people have positive work experiences this summer. We think that the WE organization had organizational capacities that would, and thanks to its network, was in a position to find youth, and somebody must have rested against the switch on the wall. So we're going to continue to work very hard to make sure that the youth throughout the country have a positive experience. Question suivie. Oui, vous avez dit.
That you and your family will continue to work with WE. You know, you've been to a number of their events over the years. Your wife hosts a podcast for them. I believe your mother's also been involved. Given today's development, will that work continue, or will you cut ties with WE altogether?
All my life, I have been involved in supporting young people, in encouraging young people's implication. My chairing of the board of Katimavik, Canada's once a national youth service organization, was part of what brought me into politics. And as a young MP, my role was consistently to be that of youth critic. So I will continue to stay active in empowering young people and giving them the opportunities to be leaders of today, not just leaders of tomorrow. I will continue to work with a range of organizations to support them in what they do. As for I think the organization is going to take some time to reflect on its next steps and how exactly it responds to this situation. But I will always be there to support young people, as I'm sure will be my family. I've
been involved with youth of Canada for years. It goes all the way back to the work that I was doing in Katimavik, which was one of the reasons I decided to go into politics. I've been a spokesperson for the youth within my party, and I've always been involved with the youth, and I will continue doing so. I will always make the youth a priority and to get involved to support organizations that do valid work for youth across the country. And of course, I think that we will have to think about its decision and think about its next steps. But I am going to continue, and it's true of my family as well, that we will continue to support organizations that have a positive impact in the lives of youth in Canada and across the world.
Thank you, merci. Next question, Steve Shearer, Reuters. Line open.
Hello, Prime Minister. I wanted to ask, you were invited to go to Washington next week to meet with President Trump and Mexican President Obrador. I wanted to know what your answer was going to be to that invitation and what went into your decision.
We're still in discussion with the Americans about whether a trilateral summit next week makes sense. We're obviously concerned about the proposed issue of tariffs on aluminum and steel that the Americans have floated recently. We're also concerned about the health situation and the coronavirus reality that is still hitting all three of our countries. We're going to continue to work with the U.S. on seeing whether that summit makes sense for us. And we will let you know as soon as we've made a decision.
Follow up, Steve?
Yeah, if you were to go, would you have to self-isolate for 2 weeks when you return?
These are obviously the conversations that we're having both with the Americans and with public health officials here in Canada, but I can assure you that at all times we will follow all the rules and all the advice of public health.
Of course, there are discussions that continue with our American colleagues as to the possibility of holding a trilateral summit next week. And of course, we will abide by all directives of Health Canada if that does come to pass.
Bill Curry from the Globe and Mail here, Mr. Trudeau. Hi. Could you just clear up? You had suggested that this we arrangement was cancelled because of we's decision, but was it also the government's decision? And then more broadly, in light of all the issues that have come up over the past week, resignations of key members from the board, it's been revealed they had a lot of layoffs there. So do you take any responsibility for the lack of due diligence, perhaps, or any concern about the lack of due diligence that went into the government choosing this route?
I think, first of all, the decision taken by we this morning to withdraw from this work with the government is one that we support. Secondly, obviously this situation unfolded in a way that is truly unfortunate because one of the things that ends up happening with this is that young people won't maybe have the same kind of access to programs that we would have. We will continue to work very hard, and we need to reflect carefully on what exactly went wrong and how we can make sure that we're doing a better job of supporting young people in the coming months and years. Certainly, the work that we're doing will continue for young people, but it'll continue in a slightly different way. But I still want to encourage young people who want to help out, who want to serve in their community, to step up, to sign up on the website, and to take advantage of the many, many opportunities that government and other organizations will be working on to make sure that young people are at the heart of the recovery and the fight against this pandemic. Nous allons continuer d'assurer que les jeunes ont les opportunités.
We want to continue to make sure that young people have opportunities to get involved. Of course, there are lessons to be drawn as to how we can deliver better programs for youth without creating this kind of controversy. But, of course, the truth is that we have to continue to invest in youth and youth organizations to make sure that our youth have the maximum impact that they can have in the context of our relaunch and the fight against COVID-19.
We said that this was a mutual decision, but it sounds like they seem to pull out here. So do you think your personal ties with We and the Kielburgers made them pull out of this contract?
I think one of the things that has been clear is that for years I have been deeply involved in a range of organizations and events that support young people. I've been youth critic since I first got elected by my party back in 2008. I was Minister of Youth until I handed it over last year to Minister Bardish Chagger, who's doing an extraordinary job. And we're going to continue as a government making sure that there are opportunities for young people to be at the heart of the recovery through this pandemic, of the fight against this pandemic. Obviously, there are things to reflect on. There are ways to do it better. But that core principle of being a government that is there to support young people and to work with partners across the country to make sure that young people are able to get the opportunities, the experience, and the service to their country at this time is continuing to be extremely important.
We will continue to make sure that youth have opportunities to serve within their communities and to serve their country throughout the country. For years, I've been involved with the youth of Canada. It's a priority of our government, and we will continue to make sure that youth have opportunities of the kind.
Bonjour, Juliane Lapointe de Radio-Canada.
Juliane Lapointe from Radio-Canada. You nevertheless defended this organization, saying that they were the best suited to manage the project. So why have you changed your mind? What brought you to that decision? How did this come about? Well, of course, with the decision that was taken by We this morning, they have decided that it was not in their interest to deliver this program for the government, and we support them in their decision. So we will continue to look at ways of delivering opportunities for the youth throughout Canada. This is something that I'm very much committed to. And so we will make sure that our youth can continue to get involved.
Obviously, we're going to continue to work to ensure that young people have opportunities to serve right across the country. This is something that will change a bit with We's decision, which we support. But we're going to make sure that we're continuing to deliver real opportunities for young people to make a difference right across the country in their communities in fighting this pandemic and also building back a stronger economy and a better future.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Christopher Nardi from National Post. In an audio recording that National Post obtained from a few weeks ago, Mark Kielburger, co-founder of We, is heard saying that your office reached out to him a few days after the program was announced and asking them to help implement it. Did you or anyone in your office at any point reach out to them asking them to help implement this program?
We knew from the beginning that because of work that has been ongoing between this government and We, that this was a decision that needed to be made by our professional public service. They made the decision in a transparent and open way, in a rigorous way, to ensure that we had the right partnerships to move forward on this opportunity for young people. We're going to continue to work to make sure that young people have the opportunities they need right across the country.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Stephanie Levitz, the Canadian Press. You spoke earlier about the national economic recovery, and parents have said, that is impossible if they don't have full-time care for their kids. At the same time, governments seem awfully focused on getting NHL players back on the ice. Will you direct the provinces to spend any of that $14 billion to make sure that school boards, teachers have the space, the staffing, the PPE that they need to get kids in full-time care?
Yes. One of the conditions around those $14 billion that we're offering to provinces for a safe restart of the economy is directly focused on childcare, directly focused on making sure that young people, including kids over the age of 6, have access to spaces and supports in a safe way. We know that we cannot restart the economy if parents aren't confident that their kids are going to be safe and well cared for. That's why we've made it a condition of that $14 billion that the provinces need to strengthen their response on childcare for preschool ages, but also for 6+. That's why we hope that the provinces will agree to take this money and make these investments as quickly as possible, because families are facing these decisions right now. Oui, c'est une condition.
Well, it's one of the conditions. It's one of the conditions attached to the $14 billion that we're offering for a safe restart of the economy. This is money we're providing to the provinces, but the condition is that the provinces have to invest in safe spaces for young people in daycare to get parents back to work. Not just for young kids, but also for those kids over 6 as well, who need these support programs if we're to get the economy going again. And that's why I hope that the province will actually agree to take the money and to help Canadians directly with this need. Thank you.
Minister Chris Lowe with Global News. What was your reaction to the news yesterday that an armed man broke into the grounds of Rideau Hall? And as you have lived on the grounds for a long period of time, have you ever felt it needs to be more secure?
Obviously, this was something that nobody wants to hear, but I want to thank the extraordinary members of the police services and the RCMP who did their job, and nobody was hurt, nobody was injured. Any further questions, obviously, I will refer to the RCMP on that. Okay. Évidemment, c'est pas quelque chose que quiconque veut entendre.
Well, of course, no one wants to hear this type of news. No one wants to hear that someone broke into Rideau Hall. But of course, I'd like to thank the RCMP and the Ottawa Police Services, who did remarkable work, in fact, a remarkable job to make sure that there were no injuries, no damage. During that particular incident. I would refer all your further questions to the RCMP. Thank you.
In 2014, and the world did nothing to stop it. China has now effectively taken unprecedented control over Hong Kong, and the world has done nothing to stop this either. The Canadian government has sanctions on Russian and Ukrainian officials and entities over the Crimea seizure. Why are you refusing to sanction any Chinese entities or officials for this blatant violation of the one country, two systems policy?
Well, sort of, as you pointed out, where you were wrong was we actually did things when Russia seized Crimea. We kicked them out of the G7, turned it in from the G8 to the G7, and we brought in significant sanctions against Russia. We are extremely concerned about the situation in Hong Kong. We will continue to look at responses, working closely with our allies, including our Five Eyes allies, who've made very strong statements in regards to the decision by the Chinese government to move forward and weaken the one country, two systems principle that is so important, not just to us, but to the 300,000 Canadians who live in Hong Kong and to the millions of people who live in Hong Kong. That's why we're going to continue to look at steps we can take to ensure the safety of its citizens. Nous sommes très préoccupés par la situation.
Well, we're very, very concerned by the situation in Hong Kong, and this is why we've taken immediate steps to show our concern over the steps taken by China. We'll continue to work with our allies across the world and in South Asia, also to express our discontent and concern over the decisions made by the Chinese. We'll also be taking further steps to underscore our hope that the one country, two systems continues to actually exist. Thank you very much, everyone.